Let's jump into this, right? Hopefully. Waiting for my live stream to start up. He be slow. This, right? There you go. Cool. Okay. So welcome back to October, right? Well, I mean, I know it's September 26th today, but starting a week early. Not a big deal. Just as for everybody as a heads up, for October, right? We're starting a week early. Main reason being that we had an extra week in September. That's like just the way the calendar works. But we happen to have an extra week in September. It was 5 weeks instead of 4 like usual. But the week of Lightbox, I won't be able to do a stream because I'm going to be at Lightbox. So we're going to kind of just use that as the makeup for the 4 weeks, essentially. So it evens out perfectly fine. It's just we're starting a week early in case you don't know why I'm talking about October now at the end of September, right? So with that in mind, let's look back at this real quick. Let's see. Audio should be working. Everything should be good. Sweet. Stream's good. Sweet. So, ta-da! This is how it turned out, right? So, this is my vehicle design from last month, right? So really not too much happened from last week to now, right? I did a little bit of rendering, kind of finished off some stuff, because a lot of it was basically pretty far along, right? There's really not too much different from last time, but it's just kind of like finessing things, adding some things here and there, just kind of pushing that design just a little bit further, right? And you know, we can always push things further than what we have here, but at the end of the day, right, this is kind of where we're at now. So just things to kind of keep in mind as we're doing this, right? The reason why I kind of went through this process specifically was because this is probably one of the more flexible processes that I kind of have, right? Where there's a lot less kind of room for error, because I've done this a lot, right? Because, you know, more often than not, you'll do like call outs, or you'll do, you know, I guess individual props way more than you do keyframes as a whole, right? Because, you know, for one keyframe, there's like 50 call outs. Maybe not 50, but there's a ton. So with that in mind, right, this applies to not just vehicles, props, even characters, you know, whatever, really. As long as you understand what you're doing, right? That first week, we're just doing ideation, just trying to figure out what shapes we like, right? None of those trucks actually ended up being used, right? In the sense that like it's the exact truck that we went with. It's just, that's just me scribbling things down, getting the first, you know, trashy ideas out, and then kind of start working through that form language of like kind of what I liked. And there's one particular part, there's a wheel well from like the third car or whatever it was, and that looked pretty good. I was like, that's kind of cool. Let's go with that. And then from there, making that variation, right? Taking this into 3D, you know, just kind of making shapes and really not pushing 3D that far, right? This is a process that I was using for maybe the last, I don't know, like 3 to 4 years. Yeah, 2024 right now, right? Yeah, so 3 to 4 years. So like, you know, when I first started learning 3D, I didn't really know how to do that many like complicated tricks, right? Like, you know, a lot of like this stuff, shit, even like today, I'm not even sure how I would do it, right? But like, you know, making some of these panels, especially panels that do that, where it's like there's like a top here, side, and then angled, and side again. I don't know how easily I'd be able to do that. Like, I'd probably figure it out now, right? Looking at it, like, as I know what shape I'm actually making. But making that up from scratch is actually, for me, really hard, right? Because, you know, I'm very limited in my 3D experience. And so I just use that kind of base model as just a block out, right? Just to help me understand proportions, just put shapes where I want it. And then I take it into 2D and I start painting from there, right? This is why it's so important to be good at actually painting, because if you're not good at painting, you're not good at drawing, you're limited to your, to, you know, whatever the technology gives you, right? Because eventually you're gonna have to touch this some way, somehow, right? You're gonna have to paint on top. And so if you can't paint on top, you know, the design really doesn't really get that far, right? But the technology should really never hold you back from being able to design what you want to design, right? So from there, just making up this this vehicle, I did a gray box version of it, and then from there, I had a lot of freedom to kind of play with the different material breakups, the different values, different colors, all sorts of things like that, right? And from there, right, we just put on decals, we put on some things, and made the presentation, right? So hopefully this made sense. Hopefully this is something that you can probably try and repeat. For those of you that like are kind of participating along, it turned out great, right? It's a process that is, for one, easily repeatable, right? There's not really, like, to be honest, not that much of a skill barrier to kind of do a lot of these things. Obviously, there's some rendering skills in there. There's some design skills. But the steps themselves are very repeatable, right? And you can do it with most things. And whatever vehicle design that you're intending on doing, right? Look at the steps that or any design as a whole, look at the steps that we did and try to see if you can apply some of those and understand why we did it, right? A big reason why I applied the color pass in Photoshop versus doing like assigning the materials in Blender, for example, right, where you can just apply a material to it really quickly, is because having the gray block out for me is a lot faster, so I can get color variations. Because for one, I didn't even have these panels. Like, these panels weren't even there, so it's impossible to like get this shape to be red, right? Because I didn't even know that was going to be red. And like having this bottom part being black, I didn't know that was going to be black. And so allowing myself just a gray model so I can just kind of play with it and then like assign values and just see where like, oh, this could be red, this could be black, and just kind of mess with it. You get a lot of freedom that way. Versus in 3D, sometimes you'll model this door and then, you'll model this bed separately, or, this piece will be connected to like this piece down here or whatever. And you're going to have to either like find those, polys and cut them out and then, assign a material to them, and it takes forever, right? It's just because you don't have you didn't set it up to do that, right? Especially when you're doing ideation in the beginning. And so it can be very difficult to actually do rapid ideation that way. So, just possibilities, right? Just things that you can think about as you're doing it, right? And this isn't like the best design I've ever seen, right? But it's just something that I came up with, and I feel it's kind of fun, right? And when you're designing, this is kind of what we want to do. We want to design something that is fun for you at the very least, right? Because if you don't like it, why the hell would anybody else like it? You know what I mean? So when you're designing, try not to design the most generic thing. Try not to design the thing that you think everybody's going to think is cool, because at the end of the day, it's a lot of generalizations, right? And the generalness really doesn't inspire, right? What we're trying to do here is show our personality, show why we should pick you over somebody else, right? Because that flavor is what we're looking for. Most people, when they're applying or when they're looking for work, can draw and paint at the level that we need them to draw and paint at, right? Because it's a minimum skill bar that we're kind of looking for. But when you show that you have like taste, you have personality, you have interests that align with the project, that makes it so much better, right? If I'm doing a project where we're designing vehicles for like the sci-fi city, and I have a sci-fi city or a sci-fi like kind of project or thing that shows that, oh yeah, we're looking at like, like Tokyo or Japan city versus like, London versus, New York, right? There's very distinct feels there. And when you show that you have like not only like sci-fi things, but also like the topic at hand very similarly, that's when things get, you kind of have that leg up, right? But you don't really know. And so that's the thing, you have to show them that you can just design something that actually says something, has a culture behind it. You know what I mean? So, but cool. That's enough of that. Let's get into some studying, right? From here, right, we're going to be kind of doing just some looser ideas, and we're going to kind of move away from the tighter illustrations that we've been doing for the last couple of weeks, right? If I actually look back at my Discord, right, for those that don't know, there's in the Discord there is a demo tab, and I just kind of put all my like last demos and stuff, and it's been like a couple months since I've done something even remotely loose, right? So we're gonna kind of do something a little more in that line, because I was like rendering here, like a call out level render here, this was like a full illustration, and then this was obviously this was just now. And so we're gonna kind of get into more of a looser territory, similar to this, maybe not as loose, but similar ideas, and then we're gonna kind of go from there. So that's what this month is going to be. We're going to be doing an illustration and learning how to actually study and do stuff, right? Because when you are working as a concept artist, right, there's this illusion that everybody makes up everything on the spot, right? Where it's like, oh, they just know how to do this shit. They just understand, you know, like, hey, this is a building, cool, and they just know how to do that. We really don't. We study just like you do, right? So let's get into this. A refresher for anybody that doesn't know. This month, right, is effective studying for fantasy illustration. In the Livestream Plus, they get to vote on the topic. Effective studying won, but the study needs to turn into something, so we're going to do it for fantasy illustration. And then just kind of hopefully come out with something that's fantastically illustrated, right? So stream 1, which is today, we're going to be breaking down studies. Really no imagination kind of happening here, but I'm going to show you not only like what I think about when I'm trying to study, but how I go about it as well, right? There's a difference when it comes to this type of studying versus others, right? And I'll explain that once we get there. Sorry, plane's going over. But then we have blockouts, so that we're going to be kind of figuring out what our illustration is going to be next week, and then material details, and then material and details, and then finish quality, right? Just really pushing that render quality, not as high as some of the other stuff I've been doing, or I guess not as high overall, right? Like the whole painting is not going to be the same finish quality, just the kind of parts that we need to look at. But I'll explain that when we get there. So, I've been doing some research. I've been doing things. Let me grab that. Hold up, that was this. Boom. Live stream. October, week 1 reference. Okay, so I had an idea. So for my illustration, right, what I want to do is like some sort of like dragon rider type of thing. You know what I mean? Think like Jamie Jones. Think like Junon type of stuff, right? But you know, obviously my way. But it's gonna be like some sort of knight, like dude in armor, right, with some sort of like dragon-esque type thing. Whether it's a lizard or not, who knows? But it's gonna be, you know, some sort of creature he's riding on. And, you know, like, you know, fantasy at its peak. You know what I mean? Like, cool dude, cool animal, cool place, right? And so, with that in mind, that's what my project's going to be based around. So, when I start gathering reference, I start, like, looking at things and seeing, like, okay, what are things that I can possibly use as a setting, you know, design motifs that I could use, like armor in this case, and various things like that. So, I started just gathering reference, right? And these are just photos that I just found online, really nothing crazy. But there's a couple things that I like. I like that, like for example, like this headpiece for the horse, or these shoulder pieces for the armor. Like I like that layering, and I think that's really cool. And so like just finding pieces that I like, you know, just more like this is a like smaller kind of headpiece versus like the way the this one is right here, right? Like, you know, it tells a different story. Armor's a lot more basic, right? And then finding, you know, like pop culture things, like obviously Game of Thrones here. I forgot what movie this was. More Game of Thrones stuff. And, you know, there's things that I like, things that I don't like, right? There's some things where it's like, I don't really know if I want to do gold and stuff like that. But I like this kind of like scaly kind of like chainmail-esque thing on his shoulder here. I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. And so I'm going to break that down in a second as to like how I use those kinds of things. And then there's like images like this, like location, right? There's, you know, I want a certain type of idea when it comes to the place itself. You know, there's a couple variations of the idea, right? More deserty feel, more like, you know, Iceland kind of feel. I don't know where this is at, but wherever it's at. Pride and Prejudice has some really good lighting, some really good landscapes, by the way. If you guys are ever, I think I've referenced that movie like a couple times in the streams alone, just like using like references from that, like one of the more foggy kind of morning scenes. That's the Pride and Prejudice scene. Stuff like this, stuff like that. More armor and like just the way that it's kind of laid out, right? Where you see like, you know, armor in certain spots, and then you see like leather in certain spots. Like why is that? There's a reason, right? Same reason why I liked where is it? this armor set right here, where it's like that kind of like layered kind of like metal, right? Same reason why I like Brienne's stuff, where it's like it just has that nice layering to it, which is kind of cool. More location stuff, close-ups of certain parts of the armor, more close-ups and stuff like that. So a couple reasons for this, right? Ideally, you would be thinking you need to look up like realistic photos, which is absolutely true, right? You should absolutely go find photos, and I would probably do that, and I'll probably show you next week and like what I kind of get to on that, right? But something very important, what I'm doing here, right? Because I know what I'm going to be painting. I don't have the sketch or anything. I don't have any like any idea what the comp is going to be, but I do know like the general idea that's going to be happening. So when I find these references, I'm looking for with that in mind, right? Because I know I kind of want a setting very similar to this. There's like a lot of rocks, a lot of grass, you know what I mean? It's not like mountainous, but you know, there's like hills and cliff sides and stuff like that. And then there's like a certain type of shrubbery, like you can see the photos and everything kind of lines up, you know, kind of close, right? There's some on the more greener end and there's some on the more deserty end, but it kind of like, you know, falls within that line. So there's an idea here. And then the same types of armor you're seeing here, not the same type, but like, you know, it's this kind of layered metal, right? And I referenced it again, and I try to find it in a couple different images because I kind of know what I'm looking for. When you're doing your reference gathering and your studies, we're not just studying something random. We're studying something that applies to what it is that we want to do, right? If you want to do an armor set, right, find an armor set that you actually like. Because there's some armor sets like this, they're a lot more basic, right? There's a time period, there's a whole history behind this that you can look up and you can find. But in general, that's not really what I'm looking for, right? And this in this case, I'm actually more looking at the horse, right? Just understand that. I'm looking at the headpiece and stuff like that, just to kind of see how that works. So just kind of know why we gather reference. And this is actually really important too, because like when you talk with clients, right, you're gonna get a packet just like this. They're gonna send you just a bunch of images and like, oh, we really like this, this, and this, right? And something to always remember, like I've said this before, you know, when you have your reference, know why you're looking at it. Because if you don't know why you're looking at it, you might grab the wrong thing. Because if I sent you this picture and I was like, oh yeah, you know, something like this, and I just said something like this, in my mind, I'm looking at the horse because, you know, that's the front thing, and I'm like, you know, really into the way that you know, headpiece is kind of whatever, you know what I mean? Like there's a thing there. I don't really like the armor that much, but you could take that as, oh, that armor is kind of where he wants to go. Let's do that, right? And that could actually lead you astray, right? Not that this armor is like super different or anything, but you know, the idea is when you talk to your clients, when you talk to your art director, understand why they like this thing, right? Don't just assume, okay, cool, night, perfect, great, I'm doing a night. You know what I mean? It doesn't, you might kind of be off target there. And this is why for me, right, like I've said before, organizing your reference to the best of your ability. Because if you can do that, right, that's kind of where you're going to be on target a lot better, right? But right now, this is just my reference folder. I haven't organized anything. I'm just like gathering images and kind of going through the thing, right? And so I know what I kind of want, and my references that I'm gathering are kind of in that realm, right? And so now at this point, this is when we start doing studies, right? What I'll usually do is grab pieces of this, right? Where I'm like, you know, I like, you know, that shoulder piece. I might actually do a study of this image, right? Or this one or whichever, right? And I'll start like kind of just looking at it and breaking it down, like seeing how it's strapped together, seeing the layering process, seeing where the design motifs are versus not, right? Because if you look at this armor, there's this kind of like scalloped kind of section right here, right? Where I guess the first or the second, I guess, panel is, and then the third panel from there is also scalloped. But then the one above that and the top one are just normal. Why is that? You know what I mean? And I can't ask her. I can't ask the designer. I might be able to ask the designer, but it's something where you don't really know why, but there's probably a reason for that. And you want to work through the logic of kind of what's happening there, right? Same with like these armors, right? Like, there's a reason why there isn't so much armor towards the legs, right? It's probably because they're riding a horse and they need that flexibility, they need that mobility, but they still need some sort of padding. So they have these kind of longer, you know, whatever they are, right? And so just kind of like working through the ideas and looking at them and understanding them, right? Because me as an artist, I don't really do that much, you know, like I guess for one, character work, creature work, armor work, right? So we're doing all three of those. Things like is basically uncomfortable central, right? And if I'm not comfortable with it, I need to do studies about it first, just for one, to understand how this stuff works, right? Not that I don't know how it works, but like, you know, just look at it closer in depth. And then two, have practice painting it, right? Because when you paint something for the first time, you'll usually mess it up, right? It's just not mess it up, but it usually won't look as good. And then by the end of it, you know how to paint it. And you know what I mean? It's like, but by the end, you're already done. So it's not useful for this time. You know what I'm saying? And so I want to do that now with a study, right? I want to kind of start figuring out these things. And a big reason why I'm using film, right, specifically, is because the lighting on here is the best. If you look at this one right here, this is cool, but the lighting is really bad, right? It's just like standard lighting. It's too noisy. It's just, you know, it's not very cinematic, and I don't really want that. And the reason I don't want that is because I'm gonna start painting like that. You know, whatever you study is kind of what you start downloading into your brain, and so I don't exactly want to do a study of this because it's just so noisy. You know what I mean? But when you see images like this, right, the lighting is designed, the moment is designed, and I want to use that as my basis for my illustration, right? Movies, generally speaking, have good lighting. Like the worst lit movies, generally speaking, are better than random photos, right? And so we want to kind of use this understanding to kind of put us in the right realm, right? If you're painting kind of out of the context of like kind of the setting that you want, like, you know, there's a tone, there's a mood here that we're kind of looking for, right, with the weather and the setting. And so when I start painting, I want to kind of understand what that is, and I want to apply that to my actual study as well, because you're trying to be as efficient as possible with your studying, because you're using company time essentially to figure this out, right? You're sitting here you know, painting something that really isn't useful for production. It's useful for you so you can understand what it is, but it's not useful to actually turn in. So it's kind of a waste. And if anybody sees you doing it, you know, it's not that they're going to yell at you or anything, but it's kind of like, this doesn't add time to your ideation phase or whatever. You still need to do the thing in a certain amount of time, right? And so you want to be as efficient as possible, right? So let's get into this. Let's start with something easy. Maybe I'll do this angle right here. That's kind of cool. Brienne looking all sick. And I'm just gonna isolate pieces out, right? I'm not gonna do the full study, right? I'm not gonna like do the full illustration. I'll talk about why in a second, but you know, that's what I'm doing. So where's my 8K one at? There it is. Boom. Cool. Let's get it. I'll just turn this. Yeah. Sweet. So, first thing we're gonna do, and if you guys want to follow along, you absolutely can. I can drop this in whatever. Actually, yeah. Let's see. Can I do this? Boom. Live stream. I'll just put it in the live stream chat. I'll drop the one that I'm doing in there with you guys, for you guys, and we'll kind of go through a couple. So if you want to like, you know, follow along or whatever. But what I'm gonna do here. I'm going to I want to study this armor first and foremost, right? I want to kind of see like how I would paint it and how it works, right? Not you can see how it works, but like I want to actually look at like the breakdown of this, right? And you can do this with a drawing, you can do this with a painting. What I want to do is I need to figure out how I can paint this effectively, right? Because if I paint each individual piece as like a separate layer, for example, it's gonna get a little bit weird. Mainly because like the highlights and stuff won't follow like this edge here, if you can see that, like the highlight there, and then there's like this it's like a sharper radius like right there. That's why there's a highlight right there, right? So the highlights are gonna follow this line and like that line right there. And if I don't if I'm not careful, right, if I kind of just cut out that piece and paint that, cut out that, and then paint it like that, it's gonna look very disjointed, right? So I don't really want that. I want to break down like how I would actually go about this. So go about this in the illustration, right? Where should I do this? I'm going to, yeah, I'll just draw it on the side here. Cool. So I'm going to do some sketches, right? We're going to kind of just walk through this and go from there. So, and what I want to talk about as I'm kind of working through this, right, is that there's like an abundance of things to study, right? You've seen me do like, for example, the I'll take a keyframe, right? I'll take a movie still, and I'll just like take the colors and apply it to my painting. You've seen me do that. That's a form of studying, right? Not the just color picking, but you know, looking at a still and then copying that, doing like a movie still painting, essentially trying to figure out the colors. That's one way to do things for sure. Another way, right, is to do sketches of like, you know, the forms and stuff. But what I'm trying to do here, because I don't really paint armor that much, I want to actually learn how to paint this material correctly, right? Just to kind of get this to feel, you know, more or less correct. Hopefully more than less correct. But overall, right, we're just trying to figure out like how to paint this metal, because it's so like, armor's like pretty hard to do, to be honest. Boom. Cool. Arm looking arm-like. Boom. This just kind of goes like that. That. Straps. Sick. Okay. So, very easy to do. Nothing really that crazy. And we're going to do this like a couple different times. This isn't like the only painting we're going to be doing today. But, let's see. What was I talking about? I want to follow this. Cool. So, I just have a rough sketch just of kind of what I'm planning to do. Maybe I'll add a little more to that so it's not so boring. I'll do like a little bit of that side right here, a little bit of the neck, pop. If you've ever wondered, like, I think something that something I kind of get asked a lot, right? Whenever whenever I'm in classes and stuff, is like, oh, do you do a lot of like studies? Like, how do you improve your visual library, right? That's a big question. How do you improve your visual library? And like, I think for me, I've seen like some students where they'll like, oh, you know, I bought this, you know, architecture book, this Greek architecture book or whatever, right? And I'm just drawing every page. Yeah, you could, you know what I mean? But a big issue I find with that is that you don't really know when you're going to use that information. It kind of becomes like useless information. Not that it's like 100% useless, but there is a, like, you're never going to use this information, right? Like, I don't know, because I've done that. Like, I've taken like some architecture thing or whatever, and I'll do a study, and I don't even know the last time I referenced like that information. You know what I mean? Like, you just kind of just like, you learned it and then that was it. That was that, right? But when I do studies, what I like to do is I do studies of things that I'm actually like working on, right? Because this is that moment, you know, at this point in time, right? September 26th, 2024, right? I'm gonna learn how to do armor, right? Because I've, technically speaking, never really done that before. Not never, but I don't do it often. And so, you know, I'm just doing the study now, right before my painting, right? And I'll just look at it and just kind of break it down and see, okay, well, what's happening here? How do I paint this more effectively? What forms are happening? How do these pieces overlap? And I would find like a couple different I guess photos, right? Especially because like with Brienne, for example, this is a character, so you see her in a couple different angles, or a ton of different angles, and you can kind of like, you know, like figure out what the rest of the armor looks like, you know, just through watching the show, right? So I would just do that, right? So here's that, boom, lighten that up, cool, right? Look at that, beautiful, right? Amazing. So first thing I want to do, I want to do this in a way that makes sense for the show, or for the not for this show, the show that I'm on, right? So when you're doing studies, something very important to ask yourself is, what style am I going to be seeing this in, right? Because if you're doing something hyper real, you need to paint this hyper real, right? If you're doing something stylized, you need to paint this stylized, because it's not enough to just paint it, you know, the way it is. You have to kind of translate this. And this is like translating on easy mode, because what happens is, you know, you're going to have to like take whatever design that you're needing to design and stylize it at the same time, right? But if you don't know how armor works, and then, you know, you're working with a new style, it can be just too much to handle at once. And so what I'm doing here is I'm going to paint this the way that I intend on painting it on the finished product, right? So whatever the show style is, whatever the game style is, look at that and be like, or if you have a reference, right? Sometimes you don't. But, you know, there's like an idea there where there's a general kind of look and feel that you're going for. If it's more, you know, for movies, it's probably going to be more real. If it's going to be more just games and stuff, you know, you know what I mean, you understand what the topic is. They'll tell you. And so when you do your studies, when we're students, it's always like, you know, we're trying to like do plein air paintings. We're trying to do these like basically trying to copy it kind of one for one, right? And so whenever I'm doing this, I'm not really trying to copy one for one. And the reason for that is because the one for one isn't as useful for me. It's not that it's not useful as a whole. It's just that I can get more out of it if I try and stylize it the way it needs to be stylized, right? I'm not going to super stylize this, but there is a illustration quality that I'm going to be hitting that makes it so I'm not so worried about you know, what's going on. You know what I'm saying? If that makes, hopefully that makes sense. But you just kind of know why we do certain things, right? So boom. Try not to color pick. I think like you can if you want. It's not that big a deal. But what I will say is when you're doing this, like for example, like this transition from, I'm not going to color pick this, but from this zone, oopsies. From this kind of zone here into the back, right? There's like a cyan-y kind of tone all the way to like blue over here. You want to kind of understand that, right? Probably the main reason is that the tone of the whole like area is kind of like cyan-y, kind of bluish, and the shadow side kind of, you know, gets warmer. Gets, you know, warmer blue is ultramarine blue, by the way, for those that don't know. But that's what we're kind of looking for. And so I want to know those transitions and understand how that works, because if you're just color picking, you're kind of losing that moment to like actually learn how to study. You know what I'm saying? So just understand that, understand why I'm not color picking versus like whenever I'm doing like my own illustrations and using the film study, right? Using the film screenshot and just color pick from there. It's because it doesn't matter at that point, right? It doesn't matter that I'm not really picking my colors, because it's, you know, it's not really that big a deal. But for this, I need to be able to understand how the color works. So this is why I do it that way, right? It's very similar to what, like when you do like a digital plein air or something. I'm not color picking from the photo I'm using, because it's like, that's not the point, right? The whole point is to learn how to do this, not just like learn how to color pick something effectively, right? Cool. All right. Let's see. I'm just going to kind of start blocking out this shadow shape a bit. I make a couple different layers, and what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to simulate how I would actually paint this, right? Because if you try to paint these pieces individually, you get a very disjointed kind of look. And so what I'm doing here, and it's probably going to work, but I don't actually truly know, I'm trying to simulate how I would actually do this whenever I actually go to paint this, because I have a theory, not a theory, but I have this idea of like how I would like to go about this in the actual paint. And so I'm using this opportunity now to help me figure out, does that work, right? Because like I was saying, there's going to be some paneling here, and I don't want to do that all individually. I want to do it as a unit, so the highlight kind of travels across correctly, right? And so I don't really know if it's going to work. I mean, I kind of know because I do this for a living, but you know, I don't truly know, right? What happened here? Why'd that do that? Anyway, so I don't like truly know if it's gonna work, but because I have a little bit of experience doing this, it's probably gonna work. And I'm just showing you like what I think about whenever I'm actually doing a study. I'm not just kind of going at this any old way. I'm trying to simulate what it's like to work, because this is training wheels essentially, right? This is me quote unquote designing my own armor, right? Without the, I guess, added pressure of actually having to design the armor. You know what I'm saying? Because doing that part is fucking hard. It's, just doing that as like doing the design as a whole is difficult, right? So how do I make it so I don't have to juggle so much at once? Because if we know the theme of this stream, it's how do we tackle complex ideas quickly, right? So, boom, do that. That's looking spiffy. Let's do that. There's that shadow piece right there. Looking sick. Pow. Any questions, by the way? We're kind of in this like we're kind of just in the painting phase. I'll chime in every once in a while on like what I'm doing, but you get it, right? You look at this, you're like, this guy's a hack. He doesn't do anything. Oh, and just like stories on like how like if anybody doesn't have anything to say, whenever things like this kind of like happen at work, like all the time. I think like whenever I first started, we'd have a project where it's like, oh, this project came in, and it'd be something like well known, right? It'd be something that like has like a has an understanding to it already. You know what I mean? Like it's a project that exists. Like I'm not saying we did Game of Thrones, but like let's say like Game of Thrones came in, we'd all be watching Game of Thrones, right? Or if like, like for example, we were doing a lot of the theme park stuff for Marvel, right? So we're just watching a lot of Marvel movies on the side because we're trying to like download all this information at once. And for those of you like like trying to like do projects and stuff, right? You want to really like immerse yourself in that world. Usually what I'll do is like if I'm doing something like fantasy related, like medieval related or whatever, I'll start like just looking up like what are some IPs that kind of have that general idea, and then I'll just kind of work from there to get this to I'll just start watching those movies, start playing those games, start watching walkthroughs and stuff of like whatever. And it's so important. It's everything, right? It's like if you can like set it up to where you're able to just like watch something or like immerse yourself in that world, it really does help kind of put you in the right like mindset. So I'm just trying to set up this like blotchiness, right? There is like, when you look at the armor, it's not like straight up like crisp highlights. It's very like, it has that galvanized kind of metal kind of look, right? Because it's used, right? It's not like the newest thing. And she'd been fighting. I don't know if she was like already fighting or starting fighting at this point. She's fighting the Hound in the scene. But it's dirty, right? It's just older armor. You can see like scuffs and stuff. So I want to kind of start getting some of those ideas down. And so when I'm painting, I don't want to just get a highlight and just go pop, right? Like that's not how it works. But I want to kind of start laying in my colors and seeing like what works, what doesn't, Like I see like some blues in this kind of core shadow area. So I'm just trying to lay some of that out and get some of this just to sit in the right zone. You know what I'm saying? Boom. There's some of that. I'm gonna saturate that, blue that up. Yeah, this week's kind of boring. This week's just studies. I used to do these a lot. To be honest, I haven't actually done these in a very long time. Something I would do before every project basically was I would do a study like this and just try to figure out like how some of these things work. But nowadays, I think something I do more of, right, is I just like I'll have it up on the screen next to me, and I'll kind of like just be referencing pieces and stuff, and it does still help, because after a while, right, it just gets to a point of like if you've done one building, you've done a lot of them, right? It's like the pieces in which you need to kind of get to that certain point. You know what I'm saying? So All right, we're gonna add some white here, not white, but just a brighter tone. Boom. I need to check the chat. Chatting. Just out of curiosity, who are your artistic heroes? Artistic heroes, huh? You know, it changes. It changes pretty often. Like, it's not like, I guess people that I'm like, let's say like alive, or let's just kind of start there, right? Alive. I'm always looking at like people like John Wall and Liberto, right? I really like the way he does things, just because like it's not like the most like realistic thing in the world, but just like the way he kind of like processes things, or just the way his paintings kind of work. I really enjoy that. June An I really like a lot. He's pretty good. You know what I mean? He's pretty solid for those that don't know. What else is there? Jeremy Fensk I like a lot as well. He's really good. I don't know. You know, it's funny. Like as you get better, you start like looking at. I've noticed I start looking at artists less. Right? Not that I'm like better or anything. Like, definitely not. That's definitely not what's happening. But it's a lot of like I'm trying to figure out something else. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to figure out like how to like, I don't know, see things differently. So I start looking at other things. I start looking at other artists, and start looking at like, you know, how to inject something else into my work. You know what I'm saying? Like if it sounds, it's kind of weird, but it is something that I, wait, hold up. Tree, leaf scatter. No, that's not it. Is that it? I'm trying to like just find something different. You know what I mean? It's a lot of like, how do I make some, because I feel like if I'm constantly looking at people, right, you only ever really get that version of it, right? You get like, you know, you plus them a little bit. But after a while, it kind of like, I want to start figuring out like, how do I as an individual, you know, just do something different. You know what I mean? Sorry, that was like the worst answer ever. It's like but it's something that I find, as you get better, as you're growing, right? It's really, you start moving out of the, out of that zone of like, I guess, referencing every other artist, right? I think it's, and I want to talk about that specifically because that's something that I think every artist should actually start moving into eventually, right? Because, you know, yeah, you can like, I don't know, you can like reference a lot of people, but eventually, right? When do you start making up your own stuff? You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna do a copy thing here. Let's see, cut that out. Boom. And take this piece. I'm gonna duplicate all this over. Oh, unhook that. There you go. Pop. And so like there's times where, for example, like there's an arm piece here that I'm like, okay, cool. I need this as a separate piece because it's painted as a separate piece. So I didn't know that right off the bat because I think for me, I was like, oh, what if I just painted it with the back piece, right? And I thought a shadow might be enough to kind of hold that together. But learning just now, right, I was like, it's probably not going to work. And the main reason for that is this piece right here. So I'm looking at this piece and like, for example, the back here, there's this kind of like, you know, it's not like perfectly round, right? It's like that, and then it kind of angles that way, right? And then the back is already angling diagonally compared to the shoulder up here, right? It's like going like that-ish, right? And the shoulder's kind of wrapping around like that. And so this plane here is more convex. This is more concave, right? Is that the term? Convex? Yeah. And so this piece right here gets popped off. So it's like, it just kind of stops. It doesn't fold with it. So I cut it out because I don't need that to be a piece, and I'd rather have it separately. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of me like figuring things out like on the fly, like right now. It's like, you know, this is me 100% being like, huh, didn't know that wouldn't work. And this is why we do that study, right? Boom. I gotta get some of that. Boom. And it's, I think something that I want to like just kind of explain to everybody as we're doing this. There's a, I don't know, a easiness to the study that's a little bit deceiving. You know what I mean? Like, it's oddly simple to do stuff like this. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that crazy of an idea to like just do a study, right? And most of us probably have, to be real with you. Just like, you know, most of you have probably done studies like this. So it's really not that crazy of an idea. But I think like the really taking your time, right? Like, especially like if you're busy, like, you know, I do this all the time where I'm just too busy to slow down and do the study as I need. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just, cuz you have like these deadlines, you have all sorts of shit to do, right? Especially like when you're working, it's like they're like, "Hey, we need this by tomorrow." And you're like, "Fuck." You know, you got to you got to figure it out, right? And so you run into this issue of like, well, let me just rush through this, and then you kind of just make mistakes, and you know, you end up with a product that's like, you know, mostly generic, to be real with you, right? And what I recommend is take your time, right? Take the time you need, because if you're late with a good product, that's better than showing up on time with a bad one. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're somebody that is constantly kind of rushing through and not really doing the due diligence, right? You kind of end up with like kind of that reputation, right? Not as for artists like in the industry or anything, but just at work, right? Where it's like, you know, like, you know, he's fast with it, but it's not very good, so we can't really use it. And so now it's a waste of time anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like, now it's like, if you can't use it, it's just a waste regardless. It doesn't matter how on time you were with the product. If the thing is not good, then it doesn't truly matter, right? And so really, like, take your time doing these things. You know, take your time, like, just study and learn things, because you only, technically speaking, only have to do this once. You know. Michi says, Kenny, what are some of the issues you mostly find aside from rushing when it comes to studies from students? I think one of the biggest issues, right, the largest issue that I've seen is not knowing why you're studying, not knowing like what you're doing. Because, you know, there's like, for example, there's like plein air painting, right? And I'm not shitting on plein air painting at all. I'm shitting on the people doing the plein air paintings. There's a difference. So there's like plein air painting and stuff, and it's just like, I think plein air painting is great. If you're not doing it, you should absolutely do it, right? But something I do want to really hit home is understand why you're doing it, right? Like, because it'll be like, for example, I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but they'll be like, you know, there's these plein airs, and it's like fucking amazing. It's like the coolest, you know, like it's a gouache painting or even digital or whatever, and it's so sick. It looks so good. Like the lighting is perfect, and you know, all of it's like, right, just solid, right? And then you go to do your own painting, and it's like the most like either washed out, or like the colors are all gaudy, or it's just like not good. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a clear difference in skill set when it comes to, you know, your ability to do a plein air with reference and then an image of your own. You know what I'm saying? And that's where it gets difficult, right? And I'll be like, oh, so what's happening here? You know what I mean? I'll look at the image and say, hey, well, like, you know, why are you able to do this here, but you're not able to do it here, right? And oftentimes it's because, I wasn't thinking about that. I was just kind of painting, you know. I was just putting strokes down, and I just recommend for everybody, right? Understand that when you're doing plein air painting, for example, right? And this is just one example, just plein air painting alone. You know, when you're doing these types of studies, what you're doing is you're trying to learn how to do that, like that lighting scenario. You're trying to learn how to, like, you know, capture a sunset or capture a sunrise or a foggy day, right? You're like doing these studies because there's a purpose to it, right? There's a, you know, like you're trying to learn how to do it. So you're trying to study like the effects of like how light hits certain things and does things or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And you want to make sure that when you do your studies, you understand what you're trying to pull from it. If you don't know what you're pulling from it, you're pulling nothing from it. And it's not that you won't get better, it's that you won't get better as fast, right? For here specifically, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to figure out how to paint armor in the most efficient way possible, right? I'm trying to figure out, like, if you're kind of you're seeing me messing with this, like messing with the strokes and trying to see like how this works, because the next time I do this, it's going to be way more efficient, right? Even seeing like some of these angle shifts, right? Seeing like how I would do that in a more effective way, learning what brushes work and what brushes don't. There's a reason I'm doing this. I'm not just painting because I like painting. I'm painting because I need to figure out how do I apply this to an actual like concept. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm going to take this exact process and I'm gonna bring it into my concept somehow, right? Eventually, we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there. But you know, it's knowing why. Especially like, for example, in my class, like World Building 2 or, you know, any of my other classes really, we'll do like film studies, right? Where I make the students do 100 or 50, or depending on what class you're at, but it was either 100 or 50 film studies, right? And there's this, you know, this is kind of like you're just kind of going through the motions type of idea when it comes to like that stuff, right? You know, you're just like, 2 graphic read, perfect. You know, you go from there and you make the thing happen or whatever, right? And oftentimes I'll see people do that, and I'm like, oh, so what did you learn? I'm like, oh, I don't know. I was just kind of doing it, you know? I was just kind of like making it happen, right? But the whole point is, you're supposed to be learning how to actually understand and break down images, and then apply that to your own way of image making. You know what I mean? You're supposed to like, you know, use it, but you know, you don't just do the film study and then that's cool, you know, and move on. You're supposed to be like, cool, let me take this exact process and apply it to my own concepts, right? Because that's how it works. And so whenever you're studying, just know why, right? Because you know, like you know that idea where like you throw a bunch of things in the air, like say like tennis balls or something, right? And you try to catch all of them, like all 5, you're probably gonna miss all 5, right? But if you throw 5 balls in the air and you only try to grab one, right? You pinpoint that one ball out of the air, chances are you'll probably catch it almost no matter what. Even like no matter how uncoordinated you are, you're probably gonna get it, right? And that's because there's a focus there, right? There's like, I want that one. The rest kind of distract you from that. Studying is the exact same way. I'm not really trying to learn how to paint armor 100%, right? I'm trying to learn how to indicate armor in a way that still kind of like looks pretty good, but isn't so like manual labored. You know, it's not so like, it doesn't feel so forced. You know what I mean? Like that's, we're trying to break this down and figure out like what, how to efficiently go about this. You know what I'm saying? And so once all I technically have to do is get my design, figure that out, and apply this exact technique, right? Where like I can break down into like 2 pieces at the very least, right? Like shoulder and like torso piece, right? I can break down to a couple pieces and still know it's gonna work. And knowing that I just need a shadow pass, right? Like a darker recess pass to kind of make that feel a little more cohesive that way. But maybe I didn't know that beforehand. I knew that part. That's why I started that way. But I actually didn't know about the breaking down the pieces part. So, boom. And like, if you're looking at this and you're like, wow, that's so easy. Because it is. It really is. You know, it's like, it's not really supposed to be complicated, right? This isn't something that like, I'm trying to wow you with my ability to do this. You know, it's not like that, you know? But what it is like, is I'm just trying to like, just paint something, you know what I mean? And it's like relaxing. It's pretty chill overall. There's proportions and stuff I have to fix, absolutely. But overall, it's like pretty chill. Boom, I like that. right? Armor looking spiffy. That's not bad, right? We're going somewhere. Maybe this back piece I don't really need to separate out. I can just kind of like do it. You know what I'm saying, dog? I think something else I see a lot too is like doing too many studies. Like you don't really need that many. You don't need an insane amount of studies to get you to the point to where it you know, you're like a boss, right? Because I see like yeah, there's a level of studying that you need to do, absolutely, right? But I think for a lot of people, like once you get to like a certain level in your study, you need to really start like just applying, right? Just using the understanding and applying it to your concepts. Because if you don't apply it, things won't work out, right? Not that it won't work out, but it's like it's not really useful if you don't actually learn how to use it, right? Because like I've done so many things where I'm like, oh, I did this thing, and then I'm like, so how do I use this in a real production? How do I, you know what I mean? And it's just, it kind of becomes useless information. It's just like you just kind of know things. You're just like you're a fun fact kind of guy, you know, or a girl, right? And it's just not, it's not very it's not a good use of time to just know how to do things but not actually learn how to apply it. You know what I mean? Boom. What did I study? What did you like to study early on in your career? So there's a couple different things. Like, okay, let's start. Like when I was a student, right? I was really into like form and function, right? Like I guess like most students are, to be honest. I because I think for me, my stance is drastically changed on the topic. But I think a big thing that I was doing a lot of was like function studies. So for example, I had this like one of these like pocket razor blade type things. It was like DeWalt. It was like one of those, like it has like the razor blade inside, but it folds out like a pocket knife. Anyway, I would like break that down and like study how to draw all those like components, you know, figure out the mechanics and like, you know, what that hinge piece looked like and all those things, which is, it was useful. I definitely say I don't want to say it wasn't useful, but it wasn't the most useful use of my time. I'll definitely say that. And so, yeah, that was the thing that I was doing a lot, just like kind of function studies. And then after that, I got really into plein air painting, right? And I was doing it the exact way I was just telling you guys not to do it. And now, you know, like I said before, I don't say this because I'm like, you know, because, oh, I know all and I'm better than you. So, you know, no, it's like I fucked up too, man. Like that was, I wasted so much time not applying. And it took like, you know, it took like my leads or my art director or creative directors or whoever being like, you know, why do you do plein air paintings if you don't know how to actually paint? It's like, you know, it sounds harsh, but it's just like, you're doing sunset paintings in the morning because you wake up, right? And this is like the crazy shit that students do, right? You wake up 5 a.m. in the morning. You're like, I'm going to go paint a sunset because I'm crazy about art and I don't like sleep. And so you go do the painting, right? And then you go to work. And then there's a sunrise painting you need to do and you just bomb it. You're like, what? And then you're like, you literally have like the plein air piece is drying right next to you. And it's not clicking one to one as to like that. Just take that and apply it. You know what I mean? Like it sounds crazy, but that shit happened. This isn't like a made up story. This is, I truly messed up one time. And I literally had a study right next to me as to like what I was doing. You know what I mean? And it sounds so stupid when you say it out loud, but it's like, you know, you just don't know these things. You know what I mean? You just don't know why you're doing things sometimes. And I think once you learn what that truly means, right? Like when you do a study, have a purpose. Like know why you're doing it. Because if you're not doing it, if you don't know why you're doing it, don't do it. Because there's other things you should be doing. You know what I'm saying? Like if you don't know why you're doing a study, don't waste your time, right? But when you do that study, right, apply it. Like learn it, actually use it, because there's a connection that needs to be made, right? I think like, for example, like master copies is a big one too, where when you do a master copy, you have like Leindecker's like the biggest master copy person for every student, right? I did it too. I'm not I'm not throwing shade at you guys, but I mean I did it too. And so like you do the master copy and then you just kind of go cool and you move on. And then none of that information ever applies, right? But then you do the one extra step of apply, right? Take the information you just learned, his way of making strokes, his process, right? Because you just studied it. And then you take that information and then you apply it to your own concept. That's when you get good. That's when you start learning like how to actually, paint better, right? Because this is you in the mindset of this person, right? Yeah, you're not Leindecker. We're not Leindecker, right? Because, he's him, we're us. But you're a little bit more in his mind space than your old mind space. You know what I'm saying? Like you understand things a little bit better because you have just a little bit more working knowledge of it. And so the thing is, when you're doing a study, it's easy. The information's right in front of you. I'm looking at this arm piece right now and I'm painting it, right? Yeah, because it's easy. It's right there. But when I have to do this for my own armor, that's when it gets hard, right? Because now I have to take the same understanding, right? The stuff that I'm breaking down here where I'm like, you have this kind of curved back plane and then you have this kind of angled, like, I don't know, waist section, right? It kind of, there's a dimensionality to it, right? It's not just a cylinder. It's, it curves like that. There's a radius to that. It kind of slants in backwards because your back does a thing. This piece kind of like stops there and then this changes angles. So I was able to cut that piece out effectively. A lot of those things, right? You're kind of learning. And then when I do my own armor, I need to remember that, right? Hopefully I'll remember this next week. But the whole point is you're doing this and you need to apply it. If you don't apply it, you never make decisions like they do. You only made their decisions. The answer's right in front of you. You're just copying answers right now, right? But when you go and do your own version, right? This is where you get put into the mindset of like, oh, what would this person do? What would that person do, right? And that's the key. It's the when, like, because I'm gonna do an armor from like the front, for example, right? And then it's to be like, well, I know how they did it in the back, so how am I going to apply this for the front? You know what I'm saying?
Uh-oh. There's some ouchies around that corner.
Nope. Hunter, you're still...
Oh, there's too many ouchies. There's too many ouchies.
Hunter, you be unmuted, bro.
Dog's biting my feet.
All right. Anyway, Hunter, you were unmuted, so I just muted you, just so you know. Just let me know when you're good to mute. Good luck with those dogs biting your feet, bro.
Hi, Kenny. I have a question for you.
What's up, dude?
So, when your client asks you to do something who is outside your comfort zone or your knowledge, so how you deal with it? You start doing like a lot of copy with the same topic of that project, and how you schedule your time, because now you have to do the projects for the client. At the same time, you have to try to learn something, and how you deal with a situation like that.
Yeah, the biggest thing, right, is work fast, right? That's the biggest thing I can tell you. It's mostly like, because okay, there's I guess the efficiency side, right? Like we'll talk about what in a second, but we'll talk about the efficiency first, right? Because let's say you get, for those of you working, right, you get an assignment from a client day one, right? You get it in the morning or you get it the night before, whatever, right? But day one you start, and then you have a certain amount of time until you have to submit. Generally speaking, right, as far as freelance goes, and as far as most studios, to be completely honest, unless it's a fast-paced studio, which, you work accordingly to whatever studio you're doing. But just understand, when you're working as in a studio, you generally speaking don't have to submit something day one. You know what I mean? Like you got the assignment. By the end of day, you need to have something, but you're not submitting anything. You know what I mean? Like generally speaking, it's usually like a check-in most of the time. I'm not saying that's all the time, but you know, because I've had studios where they're like they needed something done, but that's something else. So with that in mind, right now it comes down to what are you going to study, right? Because there's things where, like, for example, like I was saying, I'm not very comfortable with doing armor, right? Because you know, I just never did it that much. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to figure out how this thing works, and if I can figure that out quickly, right? And it's only been an hour, and then like I think 20 minutes of it was me like talking through some of the ideas, and you know the rest of it's me just like talking shit mostly. You know, it's a lot of like just, you know, take the time, right? It's only been an hour and I've already learned a good amount to where like I would probably be able to do this already, right? Like at this point in time, this is probably enough studying for me to be like, okay, I get how armor works. I get what I need to do to make a paint. And this is why it's so important in the beginning, like doing that research section, understanding what you're going to be painting, because this selection, right, was built off of the idea of what I was already going to be designing. You know what I'm saying? It's not some arbitrary armor that I'm painting here that's not going to be part of the thing. Like I said, I liked that layering from the images, so I'm trying to learn how to do that, right? And so it's a lot of that. It's a lot of just knowing kind of what you need to do, because the amount of time it's going to take you to do the painting once, mess it up, and do it again is the same amount of time it's going to take you to do the study and then do it right the first time. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's that classic quote of like, you don't have time to do it correctly once, but you have enough time to do it twice. You know what I mean? And so for me, it's usually worth it to do the study, right? And it don't take all day. You know, it's only been an hour, right? An hour of this stream. I don't even know when I started this. So, you know, look back on, for those watching the recording, right? Look back and see what time I actually started this. And like, you know, it doesn't really take that long. But now you have one, right? And I would spend, to be real with you, like 5 or 6 hours doing studies during my first assignment. You know what I'm saying? Like when I'm like doing when I'm doing this for the first time, right? I'll spend 5 or 6 hours doing it, because my speed is quick enough to kind of make up for that amount of time. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm able to, I guess, do this a little more effectively now because of, you know, I guess just years of doing it versus like when I first started. Because, you know, it used to take me all day to do a study sometimes, right? And so I'm able to, I guess, do this a little bit more effectively now than I used to be before. You know what I'm saying? So I would spend about a day doing this, because I usually don't have a submission, I guess, you know, like the same day, essentially. Usually people don't really request that. So yeah, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So I'm just trying to like figure out, and then like I guess like when I'm not familiar with topics, you know, what do I do? Exactly this, right? This is it, man. This is me unfamiliar with a topic, and I'm just like, you know, trying to figure out like, how do I light things, right? For example, this on her back here, and I want everyone to see this. I'm not super rendering anything, right? Like I'm just getting some basic blotchy colors just to make sure that my brushes can do what it needs to do and my idea is kind of working the way it needs to work, right? But yeah, looking at this, right, there's this kind of ridge, these like what are they called, herringbone? No, I don't know, but whatever these patterns are, right, this stripy pattern, they're ridges on the armor themselves, right? So I'm trying to figure out how do I do that effectively, and that's me right here figuring that out. I'm like looking like, hey, does this work? You know what I mean? Is this gonna look okay? And generally speaking, right, I know what I'm doing just as an artist as a whole, so it's like, you know, like, oh yeah, that's totally gonna work, right? Because it catches enough highlights and I have enough freedom in there to like make that to kind of, you know, do what I need to do to make that happen. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, man, that's about it.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see here. What else we got? Oh, I probably need to do this. And something like this, for example, like you could do the study, right? Where like I need to draw that by hand, but something that I need to do as well is, for example, this other side of the armor is it has the stripes mirror, right? There's like a you know, they continue over essentially. And what I need to do is make sure that whatever I have in mind works, right? This is all this test really is. There's a bunch of things where I need it to work out a certain way, and I have an idea of what I'm gonna do that might work out, but I'm not actually quite sure. And so I'm just figuring that out, you know, just going through the strokes and seeing like, does this actually work the way I'm intending it to work? Because if it doesn't, I need to refigure that out and be like, you know, really understand how these mechanics actually play, right? Like the actual painting, because I'm trying to find that like looseness in the painting where it's like there's, you know, it's like painterly, but also be accurate, right? And like finding out ways to kind of do that more effectively. Because when you zoom out, like up close, right, you see a lot of junk, right? Obviously the sketch is still there, but you know, you see a lot of like looser edges and stuff, right? When you zoom out, it's pretty good. You know what I'm saying? And you're only going to be seeing this from a certain distance. You're only going to be seeing this from, you know, however far this character is going to be from camera. So it's actually not that important that I get super rendered, because that's not the focus anyway, right? It's just trying to get the study. I'm just trying to see, like, does this work? Does this look okay, you know? And then from here, we get ridges, because we got ruffles. Let's see. Boom. P. Let's see here. And so, like, instead of drawing this by hand, and this is where I think studying needs to be understood, like, specifically, right? Where I'm not trying to sit here and, like, be the most authentic artist in the world when it comes to doing the study. What I'm trying to do is understand what the hell I'm trying to, what I even need. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, for example, there's this kind of ridge on her on the armor. Like each armor piece kind of has this like bevel to it or whatever, and I'm trying to figure out what's the easiest way to do that. You know, is the pen tool with the stroke path gonna look okay? Does that look too robotic for whatever I need? Right? There's only one way to find out. Boom. Right? But that's probably okay, right? That's probably looks good. And then what I need to see now, there's two ridges, right? And so I need to see if I shrink this, will that work? You know, because sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes it's like, it just doesn't really work out that well. And so I'm trying to see, right, what's the best way to do this? Can I warp this into place, right? Does that give me enough like leeway, you know, enough playroom to do this correctly? Warping be the secret, dog. Let's see, boom. I guess I shouldn't be talking about dogs right now. Not after Hunter. Let's see. Boom. All right.
Dang, gotta hit me with that.
Nah, it's cool, man. It was fun. It woke everybody up.
Yeah, you know, just making sure we're paying attention.
Exactly. Let's see. Boom, boom. Close that. Lock that. Airbrush that. Grab that. Pow. Look at that. Easy, right? And so now I know it works. Right now it's like, okay, that's okay, right? That's not bad. I need to expand it. It's a little thin, so boom, do that. Merge that together. Grab this color, fill all that, bring that down in certain spots. Boom, something like that. Easy peasy, dude. Look at that. Freaking simple, man. Let's go. I just do a lot of these. And the cool part is, guess what? Guess what your boy has planned for this armor piece. For those that are new here, I don't waste shit. I don't mess around when it comes to studies, because I'm just gonna use it as an asset later. You know what I'm saying? So whenever you're doing studies, right, the key thing here, right, for one, take your time, right? Like, you know, do what you need to do to like figure out how this thing is going to work out, right? But remember, you're also painting an asset here. You know what I'm saying? Like, just like what we did with the cars, just like we did with everything else, this becomes an asset you can use, right? Because one, you painted it. You know, don't just throw this on the back of the character and be like, you know, we're here. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't work that way. But if you're like, I kind of like the way this paneling works, now you have an actual painted asset in the style that you plan on, you know, doing, right? And it works out, you know, so easy, so easy. But this is why, like, just really understanding like why we do things, right? I'm a very, very big advocate of not wasting time, right? Because you know, as much time as necessary is kind of where I like to be, right? But I still need to do studies. Studies are necessary. These things are important, right? So you can take your time painting, knowing that for one, you're studying, and two, you're able to actually like use these pieces and do something with it. You don't have to like just be like, cool, that was a waste of an afternoon. I'm never using that piece again. You know what I mean? We'll talk about that later, right? We'll get good at it or whatever. But for now, just understand that's where we're going with it. This is where we're gonna end up. So for those of you like wondering like, how do you ever have time to paint assets? I'm always in a rush. That's how, because I just don't waste time. Boom. I think before, like I've explained it before, where I just like I'll paint out like for those that like photo bash, because I teach this in class, right? And I'm like, okay, so I'll use photo bashing to kind of help me get to where I need to go, right? I'll do the photo bashing part. And people are like, well, how do you have time to actually do paintings and stuff if you're doing the photo bash or whatever, right? And this is why. This is what we're doing, right? It's a lot of like, yeah, this first step is a little bit weird. It's like it takes a second, and it's like, oh, you know, if it could feel like you're wasting time, but at the end of the day, right, you're making assets, and that speeds you up so much. So you're so much faster because of it. You know, you're just blazing at this point. Because now you just have one piece that you can use, and then we'll continue this. We'll continue going into like other things in a second, but that's the idea. Boom. I did want to talk about something in particular. I had some topics. If you guys don't have anything you want to ask, but there's this problem that I see a lot of. I see a ton of this, and it's like mainly because of like the scenarios I'm in, where like we're kind of like, you know, like mentorships or like things like this, right? Like Livestream Plus and stuff like that, where there's this like, I guess the idea of finishing, right? Kind of, it's kind of like how do you take anything to finish? You know what I'm saying? Or how do you get good enough to actually do things? You know what I'm saying? Like it's very hard to get yourself to like finish assignments. I feel like oftentimes I find one of the biggest hurdles to finishing just assignments as a whole, right, is usually perfectionism, right? Like there's this idea that like, you know, I don't really want to move on until it's perfect, right? Until it's like, it looks good, until, you know, there's like, I guess a level of completion that you're like happy with. You know what I'm saying? Like this happens all the time. I feel like in classes, I get this a lot where it's like, oh, I didn't finish because I wasn't really happy with the design, or, you know, I wasn't really sure where to go with it. So I just kind of did something else. You know what I mean? And like, I feel like the people that progress the fastest are the ones that just kind of push through, right? And it obviously, you know, it makes sense as to why that would be the case. But I think a big separator, right, between some of the people that are like really progressing quickly and some people that like, if you find yourself in a lot of road bumps, right, where you're constantly like, I don't know what the hell's wrong with my paintings. I don't really know how to get past certain things, right? Like, you know, there's this this like it feels like a wall, like an invisible wall you can't see, but you know that you're running into, right? And so I get this question a lot, and it's like, how do you progress? How do I get better at this thing, right? And my biggest like suggestion to everybody, right, is just finish stuff, right? And it sounds crazy. It sounds like, yeah, of course, like, that sounds dumb. You know what I mean? It's almost bad advice. Like, it sounds funny, but something to understand about, I guess, art as a whole, right? Art is about running into issues. It's about running into problems and solving it, right? I don't really know how to do this thing, so I need to like figure it out, right? That's the idea. And so whenever I'm painting, I have to be okay with a certain level of, it's not going to look as great as I hope, right? Like, everybody has to experience that. And I think like there's a personality type that I run into a lot, and I think a lot of people know this too, where it's like, you won't really move on until you like get it right. Like, for those of you like that are progressing pretty quickly, this really isn't about you, right? I'm not. This is more of the people that like kind of run into walls a lot, right? People that are like, you're constantly like, I don't know what's wrong with this. I'm having a hard time progressing. I'm hitting some sort of like wall that, you know, that's like, you know what I'm saying? And so a thing I notice a lot is with like perfectionist types of artists, there's always this level of, oh, I wasn't really comfortable with this, so I kind of went back to fix it, right? I kind of went back to, you know, you're stepping backwards. And, you know, for those of you that know who I'm talking about, I'm not actually talking about you. Just for the message out there, for those that listen, that know, that kind of feel that way. I'm actually not talking about you. I'm talking about like a ton of people. Like, I actually have like a weird amount of students that kind of have that problem. And it's a lot of like, just, I guess, I don't say insecurity, but like there's this feeling of like, it's not good enough. It's not where I want it to be. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I can't move on until I get this right. You know what I'm saying? And so what I'd recommend for everybody, right, is just get through the painting. Just finish it 100%. And then the next part, right, is do it again. It's so simple, right? So a story from when I was a kid. I had this band teacher. I was in percussion as a kid, and you know, when you're studying music, like, for those that do any sort of music, you might know this, but I would be like on the snare drum or marimba or whatever, right? Whatever instrument, to be completely honest. But I would be doing it, right? I'd play the song up to a certain point, and then I'd mess up. Right? I'd stumble on a part, and I'd be like, shit, I messed up, right? And then my first instinct is start over. Okay, cool. You do it again. You do the thing, right? And you kind of like, you know, you play through the beats, you hit every measure, right? And then you get to that one part, that tricky part, right? And then you stumble again. And then I start over. And then and it didn't make sense to me. Not that it didn't make sense, but it didn't really quite hit me until later. It didn't quite hit me until like I was an adult. Actually like trying to learn other things. But my band teacher told me, when you mess up, just keep going. Just ignore it and keep playing, right? Because a big problem that I had was, even during like actual like chair tests or I mean, it didn't happen during a concert, but it, you know, it's like during big things, important things where you actually need to get it right. I'd play, I'd get to the part where it's kind of hard, and then I'd mess up. And then instead of continuing with the rest of the band, I'd freeze for a moment, right? And then you're just out now. Like, you went from kind of stumbled to completely gone. You know what I'm saying? And because you never practiced the next part. You know what I'm saying? You never got to the final point because, you know, you'd mess up, and then that mess up actually becomes a habit. And it was always this fight to like, I guess, figure out how to like get through that one section, but then the back part, the second half of the song or whatever it is, just never got practiced, right? And art's the same exact way. To be honest, everything is the same exact way. But art's the same way. For those of you that are like, you know, practicing constantly, you're doing studies, this and that, right? Have you ever actually done the rest of the assignment, right? Have you ever actually done the actual painting that's involved in the study? You know what I'm saying? Like, have you ever done I did the study, I did the armor study, cool, now I'm doing the illustration. You know what I mean? Have you done that before? That is the biggest key, because a lot of times, and I see this so often, where like there's certain types of students when you kind of when you teach a class that I've seen, where there's some that are like really good at that initial phase, right? Like thumbnailing phase, like the earlier weeks, I'd be like, all right, I need 25 thumbnails. They'll come with 75, right? 75 good ones too. Not even just like bullshit you put on a wall, like actual good thumbnails, because they're good at that part, right? But then I say, cool, finish that, right? I like this one, go, right? And the fall off, right? Because it's the same exact thing I talked about last week with the chart, where it's like their early progression, like the timeline, right? Thumbnail, or ideation, variation, block out, refine, right? They're like, boom! They're like, dude, yeah, this is amazing, right? And then like, the next variation stage, boom, like freaking solid. And then finish like that, right? It's like a little bit better, but not really by that much, right? Because this later half, they never actually get to. They never actually do it. And you don't run into those problems because there's a set of problems inside of finishing, right? Like actually doing paintings that people don't get to if you don't ever finish anything. You know what I'm saying? And it sounds weird, but it's just like, because there's issues with rendering, for example. There's things that like, there's just problems that you're going to run into because it's a difficult thing to do. Like actual rendering and stuff is a hard task. And so whenever I'm talking to students and stuff, what I always recommend is just do the best that you can. The design that you have is not going to be the thing that you're oops, sorry, I did that in the wrong layer. That's why that was being weird. The design that you do, right, isn't going to be the best design you've ever done, right? Same with like my car, same with most paintings I do, actually, to be honest. It's not the best thing that you're ever going to do, but finished is better than nothing, right? Finished is better than like 75%. Because now with a finished painting, you have something to show. Yeah, design's not as good as you probably want it to be, right? Yeah, there's probably some things that you want to fix, but overall, if you never actually get to that finish, right, you don't actually run into those problems. And so you're always constantly trying to figure out what's wrong, when in reality, you just got to go further, right? And then now, after you finish that painting, go back and revisit that skill. Don't revisit the painting. Painting's over, right? Painting's done, and be okay with that, right? Understand that, like, when you do these paintings, you have to be okay with just the fact that it's like, okay, that's the best I could do. Maybe we'll come back to it in a year or so, right? Do one of those like throwback whatevers, right? But just leave it alone, right? It's the first painting of 1,000. Think about it that way. Would you, if you knew that you had 1,000 paintings to do, right? Would you spend all your time fixing one? Probably not, right? Because it doesn't really matter, right? Because it's like you have 999 left, right? Why would you spend all that time? But that's the thing. I think with art, especially, there's a preciousness to it where you're like, I have to make sure this looks really solid, or especially for those like doing portfolio work, because there's that added pressure of doing portfolio work. It's always like, oh, I need to make sure this is good. It's like, no, because it's the best you can do right now, right? And just be okay with that. Cause you'll come back to it, you'll fix whatever, but if it stops you from progressing, it slows you down so much to where there's no more progress in your journey. Essentially, you're just kind of revisiting the same thing over and over and over again. you know. It's a problem that I've seen so often, and it holds people back from kind of getting to where they're going. So for those of you like doing paintings or like not really happy with where things are going, the last thing that you want to do is actually go back and revisit these things, right? Just do it again later, right? Just do another one, right? Because like for example, you know, there's like we're doing like ideation passes. This happens like every month in the live stream plus, but like it's always like, oh yeah, so I kind of went back and did some ideas and stuff, and it's like you can do that. There's nothing, I mean, you know, I'm not stopping you, but just fix it as you go, you know what I mean? You don't have to like redo a whole phase just because you didn't like the one that you did, right? Just understand why you don't like it and kind of proceed forward from there, you know what I'm saying? So very, very simple advice, right? Very like, yeah, it sounds very basic, but you know, I will say for those that like are struggling, like if you're not progressing as fast as you kind of want, essentially, right? Look at that. Look at how you're proceeding through your actual work, right? Am I always stuck at the same spots, right? Am I constantly doing the same things over and over again? Because if you are, that's probably why you're getting stuck, you know? Micha says, Kenny, what do you do when you start with an issue in painting and just cascade in the later steps of a You know, the issue, right? It depends on what the issue is. Like a lot of times, for example, an issue is, oh, my design doesn't look that good. That's fine. Dude, just render it out, man. You know, like design's not the best, like the design might not be as good, but you can still render it. A bad design can still be rendered. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it depends how bad the design is. If you're doing like, you know, children illustrations, like illustrations like a child, right? You know, yeah, maybe you don't want to like proceed with that any further, but generally speaking, a bad design is still fine, right? You're still probably going to be okay if you took that design and rendered it out completely. It's just like maybe the function's a little bit weird, or maybe the design, the form language isn't quite cohesive. You know what I'm saying? And that's fine. That's not a big deal. If there's like a logic problem where like I can't fix, like the lighting is wrong, right? Where it's like lighting's coming from one direction on this thing and one direction on another. Yeah, you got to fix that, you know? But a lot of things you'll be able to work through, and you'll be able to figure out what those next steps are, right? That's the biggest thing. It's what is the next step to kind of get me into doing, you know, whatever it is that I need to be doing. You know what I'm saying? Because if I let the design of the armor stop me from finishing the concept, right? It doesn't, you kind of miss out on a lot of like learning. You know what I'm saying? Because like, it's funny because I'm not happy with like the stuff that I do in like 6 months. You know what I'm saying? Like, generally speaking, in the 6 month mark, I'm mostly like, I don't really like what I just did. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you're not really happy with it. I would say most people really aren't, right? I mean, if you're happy with the stuff that you've been doing in the last year, right? Especially if you're a student, right? If you're happy with the stuff you did in the last year, you're probably not progressing as fast as you should be. Just as a heads up. I won't say it like that, but you know, I don't want to call anybody out. But if that's what's happening, you should probably look at your progress, because you should be getting better faster than that. You know, when you're a professional, right? That's like, there's a lot less gains in that realm, so it's a little more okay. But just as a rule of thumb, right? It's like if you really enjoy the stuff you've been doing, like maybe a year or two ago, you know, check that out. Look into that, because generally speaking, you want to be moving a little bit faster than that. But you know, I'm not really happy with the stuff that I did like a year ago, right? And I think this is something you got to understand. Like, whenever you're doing paintings, you're going to be sick of it in like a year. You know what I mean? So why spend all that time trying to make this one better? You know what I'm saying? Why spend all that time to like make it look amazing? Just do the best you can and move on to the next one, because the next one, it's going to be so much better every time without fail, right? It's like it's going to be better every time. You know it. You do it every time. But there's this attachment to the painting that we do, right? Like, I'll grab a painting and just delete it sometimes. I'm like, I don't even want to see this anymore, you know, just because I don't need it, right? Because I know the next one's going to be good, because I can do it again, right? And that's really all that matters, right? It's understand that in a year, you're going to be sick of it anyway. So why spend all that time, trying to perfect something and waste other valuable time? You know what I'm saying? Let's see. Who am I doing next? Oh, I want to do Jamie's thing. Old Jaime. Hey, Riley says, a bathroom break is usually long enough time for me to come back and hate something. Dude, for real, man. I'll submit, like, I'll be like feeling something. I'll be like, this is feeling pretty cool. And then like I'll like leave like the next day, right? Or even like looking at like doing a director review or something. I'm like, I painted that? What the hell? Like what the like that's terrible. You know what I'm saying? Like it's funny how that happens, but I mean it's true. It is for real, dog. All right. I don't know, for those that are watching House of Dragon, I do like their Kingsguard better, their uniform better. For those that don't know, I don't know, I just like the metal plating on it. House of Dragon Kingsguard. Because wait, what Jamie's wearing right here, that's the Game of Thrones Kingsguard. But the House of Dragons Kingsguard looks sick. I don't know how practical all of that is. I don't like this guy, but you know, like that armor set's pretty sick. Anyway, I don't know how true it is. I don't know how realistic any of it is. And that's, I think, something to understand, right? When we're doing this, just know, like, not everything has to be so realistic, right? There is a level of, like, you gotta have some believability in your designs, right? Absolutely. There is a sense of these things gotta work to some degree, right? But just remember, we do art. You know what I'm saying? Who cares? You know, it's not that big a deal if the armor is like slightly unrealistic. This is a fantasy piece. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? Like fall in line with the type of world that you're in, right? Like Game of Thrones is not as like fantastical as like, I don't know, I can't think of an IP right now. Like World of Warcraft, for example. Yeah, it's a different kind of fantasy, right? It's like not the same, so you can't get away with certain things. But as long as you're in the general field of like what's happening, you're gonna be fine. You know what I mean? So this is cool. I think like seeing this, if you actually look at this piece isn't like bent up. Like it's straight. It's, you know, the directionality is like this, but then they just like got rid of these rows, right, essentially, to kind of make that fall back, because that's where the arm sits, right? And just little things like that, like I wouldn't have known that, right? Just looking at it, I would have assumed that's like an elbow bend or something. You know what I mean? And something else to kind of keep in mind, the reason I'm doing arms, for example, is because I'm planning to show some sort of arm pretty dominantly, right? And also, it's one of the more complicated parts of the armor as a whole, right? Like armor, there's a lot of movement in the shoulder area. And so when you show that part, there's got to be a little bit of realism, you know? Like it can't just be like a solid chunk of thing, right? And so there has to be like a certain like realism to it. And so whenever I'm doing this, I am staying in those areas because that's more complicated. Because the torso area, not as complicated. Generally speaking, it's just a giant plate, right? It cuts off at certain points. There's certain things. I get that. But overall, right, not really that big a deal to make just a chest. You know what I'm saying? So, boom, straighten that out. Cool, right? Drawing done, baby. Let's go. What else we got? Dang, Riley with the study. What's up, dude? See? That's why Riley's working.
That's why I'm not talking.
Exactly. He's busy.
Not all
He's getting those
do it
games
at the same time.
It's funny, like it's these behaviors that you notice, especially like because I interact with students often, right? It's just, you know, you kind of know. There's people that just do the work, You know, for everybody watching, right? You just gotta do the work. See, Michi, see, that's why he's working too. That's what I'm talking about, guys. And just an update, right? Just an update on how many pieces we've done this year. Like just like live stream alone, right? You know, if we go into that demo section, right? I've done 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess that's 5. That's like 6 paintings right there. That's like 11. That's 7. That's 12. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. These are the same ones. The same ones as before. Same 19-ish. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. 25. I've done 25 paintings this year just on the stream alone. This is not including work. This is not including mentorship. This is not including demos for class, right? 20-something paintings alone, right? Just because I just turned on a damn camera to do it. So for those of you like struggling to do work and stuff, right? It's just that. Just make it happen. You know what I mean? It sounds crazy. It sounds like, you know, why would I spend my free time painting, you know, for fucking YouTube live stream, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it's that right there, right? It's you just do the work, you know, just try it, you know. I'm here doing it with you, man. You know, I'm sitting here painting, talking shit, you know. And I promise you'll come out with something that that you can definitely be proud of eventually, right? But just understand, it takes one, right? Just one painting, one person, just you know, just do the painting, and you'll probably get to where you're going pretty quick, you know. But I'm now, you know, 25 painting, and I even said this at the beginning of the stream whenever I just started streaming. It was a lot of like, I need more paintings to kind of put in my portfolio and like show and do things with, right? And I'm doing things that I want to do, generally speaking, right? The topic changes according to whatever people want to do, but overall, you know, it's a lot of me just painting the subject within the topic that we're kind of like learning under, you know what I'm saying? And so for those of you like that, you know, are kind of like looking to do more work, or you need portfolio pieces. If you started with me in January, you would have a certain amount of paintings, right? I review people's work, like you know, like people will just ask me like, hey, what do you think about this thing? You know what I mean? What do you think about my portfolio and stuff? And I give them reviews, and I'll see like 3 or 4 paintings that we did together in the live stream, right, in their portfolio. And I'm like, you didn't have that before you started. You know, you didn't have that whenever, like at the beginning of this year or whatever it was, right? But now they do, right? Now they're so much better because of it. And for those of you like on the fence about participating, right, just try it, and finish it, right? Because there's a big fall off from week 1 to week 4. Just finish it, man. Like if you're looking to do portfolio pieces, you're getting feedback right now, you know, or not now, but you know, in the group. And if you're looking for, you know, if you can't afford classes, that's why we do it, man. You know, so I don't want to shame anybody, but you know what I'm saying. I get a lot of messages, like more than you would think, of like, oh, I'm not really, I don't have enough paintings and stuff, and I'm like, I mean, neither do I, man. So you know, you do with that information as you will, but you know. Right.
Something I've thought many times is if we were to like drop you on another planet that was like an alternate universe like ours, and you just had to get a job as a concept artist, you could probably have a working portfolio within like a week. Whereas, you know, a lot of students spend months putting together their portfolio. I'm like, man, this is just like Kenny's evening demo after the workday. Yeah, I don't think it would take you very long to have I mean, I don't know. It's a question. How quickly could you make a professional portfolio? You could probably do it in a day or 2 if you really had to.
If it's a day or 2 is a little much. That's a little excessive. I could probably do a 20-page portfolio in like 2 weeks, right? If you give me like 2 weeks solid, I could do 3 paintings plus all the call outs. So that would be like 3 finished paintings, and then let's say like 5 call out pages per thing. I could probably do that in like two weeks ish, right? Maybe a little bit longer. Work is a little bit longer than that, mostly because of like approval process, right? Where it's like, oh, can we do some changes here and there, you know? So that's why work takes a bit longer than that. But generally speaking, like 2 weeks is all you would really need. Because like at work, I would do, for example, I would do a painting. One painting would take me 3 days to finish, right? Like, and you guys see that with this as well. Like, I don't really work on this that much. Outside, like I work maybe another 2 or 3 hours, right, on top of like what I do during the demos, and that's about 3 weeks worth of 4 weeks worth of work, right? 3 weeks plus like the first week is always like something simple like the studies. And so if you do that, right, you think about it, it's 2 hours during stream, probably an extra 2 hours in the week, so that's 4 hours total times 3 is 12 hours. That's 1.5 days, 1.5 work days really, to kind of do these demos, right? And so, you know, you multiply that by 3. That's my first week essentially, and then call outs for each one. So I did a call out for like, you know, in this case I do like the interior or something. I do a call out for that ship, and then I do, this is the call out for this painting here. And then after that, it's like you just do a bunch of bushes and do ideation process, package it all together, send it out, you know? Because we do that for a living, right? That's for people, for everybody, right? Understanding what a portfolio is. It's not just like, it's not just the, I guess a body of work that shows your skill set. Yeah, it kind of is, but it's also exactly what we do in a studio. You know what I'm saying? Like, because like, for example, whenever I do a portfolio, and for everybody, right? When I show you portfolio work, right, where it's like, we have like portfolio classes or like project stuff, like the vertical slice stuff, like keyframe, call out, you know, and then function shots / sketches, right? That's not me like making up a process to show everybody how I do things. That's what I literally do, right? That's work. That's just like, that's just the process. That's production, right? I'm just doing exactly what I would do when I work in a studio, right? We'll put together a packet for that location, and that's really what that is. It's a design packet, right? And so when I do that, it's just me doing it over and over again, essentially. So, pop. There you go. That's cool.
One more thing I wanted to say is, it's taken me a really, really long time to figure this out, but there was kind of an adjustment period when I started doing concept art. If you want to be a concept artist, this sounds so obvious when you say that out loud, but you are going to be drawing and painting a lot. I mean, a lot. Like, I have friends that just work so hard. They've been doing it for so long, and I don't know, like, I see it when I took classes, and I was one of the ones who didn't always finish work. Kids draw like 5 or 10 hours a week, and they think they're going to be a concept designer. If you want to draw 5 or 10 hours a week, you are probably in the wrong business.
Yeah,
it's a lot of drawing.
It's like it's a ton, right? And it's something that, like, for everybody, like, you have to like this to like do it. You know, it's I mean, you know, it's not that crazy of an idea to like what you do, but like, to do this, right? Like, I'm, you know, I spend my free time, like, for example, like right now, right? Like, drawing and painting, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, this is extra. This is on top of the already 40-hour work week, on top of the mentorship and class time sessions, because I do enjoy it. And, you know, obviously a lot of this really is about like helping, right? Just being like, hey, this is how we go about this, and trying to give people a leg up when it comes to actually doing, you know, work and stuff. But a lot of it really is like, yeah, you're gonna be doing this for hours on end, and you have to enjoy it, right? For those that like are looking to kind of like, not like, if you don't really enjoy the act of making it, you can't really, you won't really, I guess, I don't know, you probably won't make it that far, because it's a skill thing, right? It's hours to get to that process, you know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of that. It's a lot of figuring out, like, how does how do I, fix some of these problems, and how do I address these things? That way, when I'm at work, you don't run into that problem anymore. You know what I'm saying? I had this talk. I can't say with who, and I can't say about what, but they were making this tool that is what it is, and they were. It feels like, especially with stuff going on nowadays, there's this like trying to shortcut the drawing process or the design process, right? There's always this like, especially when you see like a lot of AI stuff happening. Sorry, AI stuff happening. It's just like, I think the biggest difference with like what we do is that we enjoy this, right? Like, yeah, the final product, the final painting is cool. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I enjoy that a lot, but also the act of just doing it as a whole is fun, is interesting. A lot of us, join this industry because that's what we like doing. You know what I'm saying? And so for those like I was having this conversation, and I was just telling them, like, we don't do this because we're we purely like the end result. We do this because we like actually the journey of, like, the application of. And that's why a lot of people, like, are really against AI, because it takes away that journey. It takes away that process, right? Because it's not about the final result for us oftentimes, Yeah, the final result is cool. Getting the cool painting is a good bonus, but you can't be in this you can't be in this field and like hate drawing, you know what I'm saying, or hate painting, because it doesn't work that way, you know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, I think, and something to remember too for everybody. And I think I've said this a couple of times. I've said everything a couple of times, but like, oftentimes there's this misunderstanding of like professionals versus students, right? For a student, you got to know the bare minimum is to match what the professionals are doing, because there's a level you need to get to, right? It's a finite level. It's not this arbitrary thing. It's an actual skill set you need to actually achieve, right? And so when a professional is working, they work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, generally speaking, right? That's the minimum, essentially, right? Like, some people work more, some people work less, who knows? But the idea is we work 40 hours a week. And so as a student, you're trying to catch up to that skill set, because if you're not working, you need to get to the professional level, which, minimum is 40 hours a week. And so as a bar, just remember, if you're not working 40 hours a week, at least, right? Obviously, I know that's not possible for everybody, right? Some people have jobs, some people have family, they got to take care of this and that. But, the idea is you want to do at least 40, because that's going to put you on pace with what professionals are doing. You know what I mean? Because we're designing, I'm designing stuff that, maybe it's not my most favorite thing to design, but it's still practice. It's still like me drawing 40 hours a week. And so, and that's not including the extra live stream, extra all this and that, right? To kind of make all this other stuff. And so just kind of know that, right? Just understand that the field is a lot more competitive than you might believe, and the workload that it takes to actually get there is insane, and that's why it's so important to actually like this, because if you don't, it's a nightmare. It's just torture. Just go do something else. You can make more money doing other things, like, it's like, it doesn't pay that. It pays well, but it doesn't pay that high. You know what I'm saying? But, it is what it is. Boom. So I'm trying to figure out like how to actually paint these scales. And I'm trying to do it in a way very similar to kind of what we were talking about with Brienne's shoulder thing. Because Brienne's was like level 1, right? Where it's like, just a couple plates, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plates, right? Stacked together, right? So it's like there's the interlocking. But then Jamie has this like kind of chainmail-y kind of like shoulder piece, and that's, for me, that's really cool. But I'm like, okay, I don't want to paint every single scale, and for one, it won't work that way anyway. It just won't look that good. But now I have something that like kind of works. I set up a small grid for myself, and I'm trying to study like how to actually paint this. And my solution was I was looking at the gaps towards the bend, like the flat, like, you know, if you imagine his arm like a box, right? Like a box, right? The flat part here is because it's sitting on his bicep, tricep, midsection right there, right? And then over here, it's bending across his arm, so you see a lot more of those scales kind of popping off. So I'm trying to like replicate that idea, right? So tan is not what I want. I'm gonna kind of I'm gonna do this. There's a little more gold, certain spots. Something I like doing, if you don't know what color something needs to be, start mixing. Start just throwing things in. Like I'm just throwing a color in there. Like that's too yellow, so I'll troubleshoot it. I'll kind of dial it back. Because this is like a weird kind of bluish, goldish. It's very odd. It's very like not what you know what I mean? But that cyan's like too cool, so I just need to do that. That's right. That's warmer, not dark enough, right? Because now we're looking at shadow side versus light side. Light's coming from behind him, or like top back, right? More ambient, but top back. And then there's the this, darken this down, and there's a warmth to it, so I'm gonna warm that up by desaturating, and I just kind of like do something like that, and that gets me kind of close. Right now I have like the 3 quadrants kind of in row, and now I need this backside to get a little bit warmer. Boom. And I'm going to smudge this around to kind of get me a nicer gray that works. Boom. And now I need some more of this kind of cooler tone. And I need this lighter gold side. Bam. So that was that. Now I'm going to highlight these 3 pieces right here. Boom, boom, and then boom. And then he has like a little bit right there. A little bit right there, a little bit right there. And that's the start. Right now it's like I'm just gonna kind of start figuring this out, but that's kind of like when you zoom out on a far end, it's too saturated, but it's getting kind of close, right? You kind of get it. And I can darken this whole thing down, desaturate, and that's probably kind of where I want it to be. Boom, 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 boom. Let's go warmer, brighter. Warmer. Brighter, warmer. Nope, not that way. That way. Sorry. That's better. Cool. Kenny, what did you hate the most as a student? Man. Huh. I guess, okay, you're probably asking this in terms of like stuff, like painting wise, you know, like ability things. I'll answer it 2 ways. I'll answer it in the I'll answer it with some other stuff in mind too. So, as a student, I didn't really like rendering that much. I was okay at it. Like I did like, for those that know, I have seen like material studies and plein airs and stuff from me, like from when I was a student. Yeah, I mean, I was okay at it. I wasn't amazing by any means, but I was okay. I just hated it because I just had like the attention span of like a goldfish, right? Which I'm actually learning now that's like forms of like ADHD, undiagnosed. Let's make that apparent. But I mean, looking at the symptoms, it's like 9 out of 10. So I don't know. But anyway, I just hated rendering, right? I just really didn't enjoy it because for one, I wasn't good at it, because that was a big thing. It's just like, if you're not good at it, it's just like it's just a nightmare to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just sucks. And so, I really didn't like rendering that much, and very like painting was actually really hard for me whenever I started, right? You guys know me now as a painter, right? Like as somebody that kind of paints more often than not, essentially, right? I wasn't like that. I was more of a draftsman whenever I first started, but I always wanted to paint. You know what I'm saying? So that was a big thing that I had to like figure out. And we have stories for that too, but you know, we'll save that some other day. But yeah, I hated that. But I think to be honest, man, the thing I like thinking back now, like even like some of the harder kind of rendering assignments that I had, it was fine. You know what I mean? Like it was cool. What I hated, to be completely honest, was the personalities. Art school makes me so angry. Like just the way people treat you, right? And the disrespect that you get. And I'm sure it still happens. I'm sure it still happens within my own Discord, right? If I ever see it, just so you know, you're getting kicked out. But but like, there's like, it's just the disrespect of like for example, I'm sure this happens too, even within like my own conversations. But like if someone's talking, right, for example, like student to student, and it's like, I guess if one of the students isn't as, I don't know, well known or well versed or not as whatever as some other student, you know what I'm saying? Like it gets very like weird because it's, it's like there's the advice just isn't like taken or anything. There's this disrespect. Or like if you're in this room talking to people and this like maybe one artist just isn't working or something, stuff like that, right? Just some petty stuff. There's a lot of that happens. Like you're just disregarded, disrespected, and overall your worth as a human being is just gone, right? Like, maybe I'm making this up, who knows, but this is how it feels in art school. Whenever you're talking with a bunch of students, right, it's just a big like dick measuring competition. It's like who's doing what, who's worth something, who knows this. And it's something it's the worst thing to ever do, because first and foremost, remember this: if you don't learn anything during my streams, remember this one key fact: you're going to be working with this person someday, or this person's going to be in the industry with you, and they actually might be your boss one day, But I remember when I first started, right? I wasn't very good. No one's very good when they first start, right? But like, you can't even have a conversation with somebody without being like, oh, do you work somewhere? Can I see your portfolio? And then they see it. They're like, oh, okay, cool. And then like, from then on out, right? Your like worth as a person that contributes to conversations is gone, because they're like, oh, he's not very good, so I don't need to say hi. I don't need to, I don't need to do any of this. Like I literally had someone like to my face, like it was like the second week of a class. I remember his name too. I'm fucking, I'm not blacklisting him, but I'm definitely not hiring him. And it's just like, I was parking my car, and I saw a guy across the street. He's in my class, right? And I said, hey, hi, morning, because it's morning, right? Like a human being. And then he looks like directly at me, and then just looks on. I'm like, what the fuck? Who does that? You know what I mean? Like what kind of person does that? And it's not even just this one person, but it's everybody. Everybody does this, and I hated that. Because it's such disgusting behavior. Because it's like, I guess art students forget how to be a human being for just a second. You know what I mean? Like they just don't understand that, like, outside of art, you just be a person, man. You know what I mean? And it's, I don't know, maybe I'm getting a little complaining, but there's a lot of that, right? Because if you're not good, you're not worth anything in this in a class setting or whatever. And it happens. I promise you. For those that don't know, it happens. You're probably lucky enough to be good enough to be part of those conversations. But for those of you that aren't, right, you know what I'm talking about, right? Where it's like any opinion you put out just gets either shot down or gets, whatever. And then, your everything always gets like questioned with you, or, this and that. And it's a nightmare. I hated that the most, because it's so like degrading. And it's funny because as soon as I got my first job, that stuff disappeared, right? It vanished, right? You start kind of like, becoming a bigger part of the conversations, or people are like listening more. And it's like, well, you never listened to me before. Because I had the same person, same fucking dude, that just like ignores you that ignored me that first time. when I finally got my first job, all of a sudden he's like the nicest guy in the world. I'm like, what the hell? That's fake as hell, dude. You know? And I would like, after I got my first job, I'd be like just sitting there hanging out with people at school or whatever, just talking. And then you would see people come up, and then like I'd have a friend or something with me. Like we're just talking, and then they'd like butt into that conversation. And then it would be like, hi. I'm like, hi, you know? And then they're like, hi, my name is this. And, you know, yeah, I just wanted to say hi. I'm like, oh, my friend's name is this. You know what I mean? Like, you're just completely, because this person, like, is unknown. Or like, whoever this friend is, right? He's just generally speaking, a not known person. And I would see this. I'm like, oh, okay, I know exactly who this person is. And for everybody here, don't think I don't see that. For those of you that do that, you know who you are. But, like, don't think that we don't see when that happens, because it's disgusting behavior. And just know that it's not even about me. It's not even about me as an individual person that thinks that's disgusting. Just remember, like, these people that you do that to, they're gonna be art directors one day, right? The key thing to understand is, like, if you stay at a place long enough, you'll probably be an art director. Just, you know, just know that, right? Once you start working somewhere, if you stay long enough, generally speaking, you'll probably become an art director eventually. And that's, you know, that's our industry. You know, like these people that we kind of shit on as students, right? Because they're not good enough or whatever. It comes back to haunt you. Just remember that. And I think for me that I think back on art school, and like at the worst assignments I've ever had, I was still happy. I was still like excited that I was painting, because that's all I really wanted to do, right? It's just like, you know, I didn't really want to do arts, or I didn't want to do like medical stuff. I didn't want to do all the other stuff that I was expected to do in college and all that. And then like my first, like the most tedious, think about it, the most tedious task you ever do is like a turnaround, right? And that's fucking dope, dude. You get to draw. Like, you're just drawing for a living. That's insane, you know? I'll get assignments sometimes from my leads or whoever, and they're like, oh, do you want to do this prop? I know it's kind of easy and it's kind of mind numbing. I'm like, dude, I'll do whatever you want to do, man. Just tell me, right? Just tell me what you need. I'll do it. Because at the end of the day, you're getting paid to paint. That's incredible. You know what I mean? Like, I'm doing a copy of Jamie Lannister's shoulder. You know what I mean? Like, it's so crazy, right? It's just you're just painting, and like that's all. It's the most fun it ever gets. But yeah, when you think back on like the worst memories, it's always the people. You know, it's always, and that's why for me it's like I try my best just to make sure that, like, you know, everybody at the very least feels part of that conversation. If you're not part of that conversation, right? I can't force you, right? But I would recommend it, right? Because at the very least, just know that, like, you know, to learn things, you have to be part of that. You have to like talk. You have to be here, right? Because there's not much we can do if you're not participating. You know what I'm saying? So things like that. Sorry, I got deep, but it was like
Something else in that.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say something else in that same vein is I've learned you don't know someone's trajectory. I had a kid in one class, this was a few years back. He was a really super nice kid. Guy, I can't remember his name. But I remember thinking at the time, after a couple weeks, I was like, yeah, I feel like I'm kind of better than he is. We were some of the better kids in the class. And by the end of the course, he'd done the best work. And then he went on and did even better work. And then I know shortly after that, because we talked on Instagram, that he'd gotten a job at a great studio. And I was just like, fuck, you really don't know somebody's trajectory. And they do one or two assignments. That is not nearly enough to judge if they're good enough to be in the industry. He was just new, you know? But he was like super hardworking and a super good person. We
had like teachers that they're just known as the like, I don't know, there's something about the way they teach or something that like when a student takes any classes with them, like there are certain teachers at like even Brainstorm or just anywhere where when you take that class, you just evolve. There's something. It'd be like the most average student. It'd be the just like mediocre at best, right? Not that good. But then they'd come out of it and you're like, what the hell just happened? You know, it's like you take this class and they get incredible. Like I had a class. It was me and Kaysen, for those that know who Kaysen is, but it was me and Kaysen in it's called Design Studio, right? It was with John Park and James Pack, and Kaysen was okay. Something, you know, like he was fine. He was good at drawing, but like he kept telling us, he was like, oh, sorry guys, I can't really paint. I don't really know how to paint. And then, you know, lo and behold, it wasn't, you know, I don't want to say it like this, but his painting wasn't that good, right? I mean, we were students, so, you know, and I know him, so I can talk shit. But like he wasn't that good at painting, and then but he was good at drawing, and that's kind of what he stuck to during our project together, right? We did a me him and another person, or two other people did a redesign project for Mirror's Edge, and he wasn't painting really that at all, right? Because he couldn't. And then when he tried to paint, it I mean, I don't say it like this, Casey, if you're listening, I don't say that, it was kind of bad, right? I mean, we all were, but he took a class and then like just fucking from like, I couldn't even explain it. Like from 0 to like 10, like just boom, like something happened. And it was literally the next term, like 10 weeks later, right? 10 weeks plus a break later. Like, cause he took that class. I didn't take it. I was taking some other classes or whatever. And it was like, what the fuck just happened? You know? And he's like, I don't know. I just took this class, you know, like, cause you know, everyone, you got, for those of you who know who he is, you know how he is, right? And as he's like, I don't know, I just took the class. And then it's like, it's incredible because there's something that just happens, right? It's just like, you don't really know what it is. You don't really like, it's, even the people taking the class can't really explain it half the time, but it's just the way the teacher teaches, the way that, you know, the level that they were at, whatever it was, they just take that class and all of a sudden everything kind of just clicks, right? And for, you know, when you know, going back to our initial topic, right? It's when you're like seeing people's portfolios, that's just them as a student, you know what I mean? Because they're going to get this information. They're going to get some information somewhere that like magically does something. All the gears, they have a bunch of individual gears that work well, but nothing really clicks. And then all of a sudden you put these gears together and then it's like magic. It multiplies, right? And, you know, yeah, like you're saying, there's something that happens. It's just, you know, it's like incredible. But you can't know that, right? But that's the key thing here to understand. You know, we don't treat people well because there's a potential for them to be good, and then we connect with them. That's not the correct assumption to take from this conversation. The thing is, treat everybody like a human being, because that's what you need to be doing anyway, right? And then just understand, like, everyone's gonna get good. Everybody in art school is gonna get good. And it happens. It happens at the craziest time sometimes, and out of nowhere, out of left field, somebody would just be just massively better. And you're like, and you take the same class, and like maybe you didn't even get as good, kind of thing. It's just like, it's just whatever they needed at that exact moment. You know what I'm saying? So things like that. You never really know where someone's gonna end up. You never really know how someone's gonna kind of be. And you just treat everyone right. You know what I mean? It's not that crazy. It's really not. But for some reason in art school, it's always like that. Everyone's out for each other's throats. Everyone's looking at each other like competition. It's like, I mean, you know, you can, but it's a lonely life. No one likes that, and everyone remembers. You know, so. Cool. All right, time is it? 1:13. Let's go. So, I'm just gonna continue this, right? Throughout my week, I'll come back with probably a couple more studies just to kind of get this. But you know, like, just do this, right? If you know you're gonna be studying something, right, just apply it, right? So, what we're doing here, just as a refresher for everybody showing up, everybody that's seeing this later, whatever it is, right? What we're doing here is we're doing some studies to try and figure out how to paint things. For example, that chainmail is actually kind of hard. I'm actually struggling with it a little bit. Like I'm like trying to figure things out. But you know, we're trying to learn how to make some of these things work, right? How do I paint this in the most efficient way possible? How do I get some of these ideas? Because I'm going to take these ideas and apply it onto my own design. So before you do your study, for everybody that wants to participate in this, which I would highly recommend it, you know, I mean, just a suggestion. But if you're going to participate, right, know what you're going to paint, right? Like know the subject. For me, it's going to be some sort of like dragon rider. It's going to be some sort of dude in armor with some sort of large creature. I don't know if it's going to be like a lizard or a dragon, but it's going to be some sort of creature with like a harness and like armor and stuff like that. And this could be in like a fantasy setting, right? That's going to be my thing. And so right now, the thing that I struggle with the most is actually painting like figures or painting like costumes and stuff. So that's why I'm doing my study. Whatever you struggle with, that's a dominant part of your scene, paint that, right? Because like if you, let's say for example, if you're a character artist and you're trying to paint a fantasy illustration, there's a background that needs to be involved, right? So paint that background, like really like, you know, take the time to learn how to do like a quick plein air painting, right? If you're having trouble with armor, study armor. If you're having trouble with faces, do faces. Take whatever it is that you want to study and actually try and study that thing in the subject that you want to study for, right? If you're doing some sort of specific thing, like a dragon, knight, armor rider kind of person, study those things. It's not some random thing. There's a purpose behind this, right? So paint this up, do whatever you want, right? Keep it loose, keep it like not loose, but you see how like for Brienne's armor on the right there, it's not like the tightest thing we've ever seen, right? Because I'm just trying to get the main idea. I'm trying to make it feel like a cohesive armor that has lighting involved and all sorts of reflections and stuff. Same with Jamie's armor, right? It's not the tightest thing you've ever seen, but the illusion kind of comes and you can kind of see how it's going from there, right? And we're going to use this as assets probably to apply to my paintings next week, right? So I'll kind of start blocking that out and kind of showing you where I go from there. I'll do a couple more studies. It doesn't all have to be the same study, right? I can do some plein air paintings. I can do some armor studies. I can do some faces. I can do some scenes, lighting, whatever. You can do a couple different things, but do as much as you need, right? Spend the week, just relax, right? We've had, for those that have been following along, we've been doing like 3 or 4 months of straight like production level things, high level, design heavy things. Take this time just to relax, right? Just do some studies, make it fun, make it interesting. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll kind of know something else, right? This is how we improve our visual library. So, but yeah, just recapping, right? What we did last month. K-Truck, right? Looking back at this, right? This is one way to do a production thing. We'll do something very similar in the coming weeks with the same idea, like the material stuff, you know, all that stuff. As you know, I repeat the same information just in different ways, basically. For every topic, because everything it's the same way that I paint regardless of what I'm doing, so you'll kind of see how that goes about. But you know, this is what we did last month. For those of you that participated, thank you so much. You know, hopefully you learned something new, hopefully you got something good out of it. For those of you that are wanting to participate, right, that's another month that goes by where you don't have another portfolio piece. Just, you know, keep that in mind. You don't have to be part of the Livestream Plus, but just participate. Just do it on your own, right? Follow along. There's nothing that I discuss in my Livestream Plus that I'm not discussing here, right? I talk about the same topics. The only difference is you get feedback on your exact painting during those streams, and then you know, we just kind of get the assignment from here. So October is done. Vehicle design is over. Moving out of sci-fi into fantasy, learning how to paint stuff. Hopefully we get some good studies out of this, and then yeah, we'll make something fun happen. So, all right, everybody. Well, that's all I got for you this week. If there's any questions, just hit me up. Please, you know, come with questions. I think for those of you asking questions, thank you so much. Right, it really does improve the quality of the stream, and it shows me kind of like what you need, right? Because there's things that I just can't remember that I struggled with during those years. It's been like 10 years since I've been in class, you know? So, you know, if there's anything that you guys are struggling with, please, you know, bring it up. I'd love to talk about it. If not, you know, I have topics that I bring as well. So, but yeah, thanks for hanging out, and I will see you guys next week. So cool. start of October. I'll see you guys.
See you. Thank you so